Hey guys, Stealth here, bringing you yet another 10v10. This time it's the same map, and this time I'm playing Korea, so that's the difference. I'm playing South Korea to be precise, and because my South Korean deck is set up for open warfare, it is a general deck, but I've made it so that it excels in maps like this. So I'm not using a lot of infantry, but I will be using quite a bit of tanks and vehicles, which hopefully will give you a good illustration of what exactly South Korea can do. Now, as you can see, we're trying to spread out across the map, and last time I picked this area for my operations because this was a very urban area, and that's where a support deck can do pretty well. But for a tank or vehicle-based deck, this is not the best area. So instead, I decided to go all the way to the other side of the map, where there are some nice open areas where tanks and especially ATGM vehicles can do very, very nicely. Put down markers. I'm going here, here, and I want my own CV here. My opening move is, of course, a couple of recon units, AA units, because I knew there was a airborne player on the other side. So a couple of AA units, a couple of M36s. These are the very, very old tank destroyers, but still very decent. I brought in a couple of tanks, although it's kind of hard to see them between these guys. Here they are, the K1s. Adding in some more long-range AA, which is going to lag behind a little bit because they cannot be on the front lines. No armor, of course. Then I wanted to capture these buildings with some infantry, some AA infantry to be precise. So here they are. These are Mistrals. And I was a little bit concerned about this town because I was going to go right up against this side. But that would mean that this road was open. So I'd have to either move really, really fast or spend a bit more points here to get this area under control. Now in the last couple of seconds before I entered the game, I decided to bring in some tows. And these tow carriers are pretty good, especially excelling in open ranges, but the one item was missing is a recon unit. So I was a bit concerned about not having recon nearby. Because an ATGM is good, but if it cannot see anything, it's not that good. Anyway, we're pushing up hard here. I have my ally here with me. This is Working 1933. And together we're really securing this flank very, very quickly. He also has some flying command infantry. And I think he's going to deploy them right there. Now capturing Charlie, of course, gives us a new resupply zone from this side on Charlie. And that's very nice because it saves you the trouble of having all the way to come from here. Okay, Mistral's offloaded, carrying on. And I was initially planning on setting up a defense here, but Working 1933 had quite a different plan, and he went to push. So the moment I saw that happen, I was, okay, we're going to push. So I decided to put everything back on the road, got everything to move away, and by doing that I was able to support him, because he didn't have a lot of heavy vehicles. I'm not entirely sure what kind of deck he was using, but I think he never used a lot of tanks. Mostly infantry, and he was very helicopter heavy, so I think it might have been an airborne deck. Opening with 2 ninja helicopters is pretty dangerous. I think one would have been enough here, but he went with 2 and it worked, so that's fine. Now, since we secured Papa on this flank, we could immediately move up into Quebec, and this is where things got interesting. Because up until now we had only seen 3 planes, and that was the extent of their forces. Now they were bringing in forces. A couple of T-80 BVs, 120 point tanks with very good ATGMs. Tunguska, and something else. Now I always like to train myself to recognize these things, and I think that this is a Tunguska because it has a search radar and something that resembles a gun. If you're not sure, you can always compare it to something else, and I think it looks quite similar to this one. So that means we have 2 Tungushkas. I have a helicopter here, but otherwise I don't have any helicopters, so I don't need to be afraid for AA. But I know that my ally does have a lot of helicopters, so I try to get these guys out of the way as soon as possible. Mainly because they give me 100 points, but also because then his helicopters can engage these 120 point tanks, which is a bit of an overmatch for my K1 tank. Now right here, this is when I realized, okay, we got tanks. I started to reverse them, keep their strongest armor towards them. And there were quite a bit more tanks here. There were some other vehicles firing. You can see they fired a lot of ATGMs here. Everything missed, luckily. Lost some AA. I called in a recon early, but that thing got in way too early. It was a little faster than I expected. So he's probably going to meet a Tunguska very, very soon. There you go. Now this is interesting. This Aardvark from Roman 2395 came in completely unchallenged. The only thing that could have challenged him was the Tunguska, but otherwise there was nothing here. So he did a very, very good bombing run with cluster bombs on this area. And that really helped thin out the tanks a little bit, at least wound them. Quite of a ballsy move by Roman here with taking out one of those Tunguskas using a Thunderbolt. Not exactly the main role for a Tunguska, or sorry, for a Thunderbolt, but he did it. So that's excellent. And he kept it around to engage these units here. Now keep in mind, none of this was coordinated. The only thing we did was play off of each other. So I saw that he didn't have a lot of heavier vehicles. I saw it was mostly air player. So I decided to bring in some support helicopter of my own. But mostly I was going to bring in more vehicles and more heavies, because he was lacking in that department. Together we worked very, very closely on attacking his AA, and then him attacking the tanks which came after it. So this is a good example of how you can be cooperative, how you can look to the other players, see what they're doing, and then adapt. Because I always find it easier to adapt to them than to have them, than to expect them to adapt to me. Because I know for certain I can do the one thing, I'm not certain they will do the other thing, so I'm not sure they will adapt to me. So that's why I'm always the one who's adapting my playstyle, insofar as my deck gives me the flexibility to do so. Now we're really scaring these guys out of this zone. And you can see just how vulnerable these tanks are without any AA support. He immediately set up a air defense barrier here, and I added with a BHO because he had only closed arrows, so only AA missiles. And I thought that a SPOG would be a nice addition, so I called in one of these K30 BHOs. Now, having M36s in your deck is great, but they run out of fuel. 250 kilometer autonomy, so that did teach me something about this map. These M36s came all the way from the back from my initial spawn, which was right about here. So this distance is 250, more or less, because they pretty much were on the road the entire time. So now that I know that, I can keep it into account in other decks where I have some vehicles with low autonomy, such as West Germany, which has the Weasel vehicles, which are very, very low on autonomy. So I also use lessons like these, and to refuel these things I just brought in one cheap supply truck. Now, I brought in 4K AAV-25s with infantry. I was initially planning on putting them here, offloading them there and pushing into the forest, but by then everything had moved up to the edge of the forest, to the edge of the zone even. And this is something you're going to see a lot in this game. We were pushing so fast that it was very, very hard to keep up with everything. Because the moment I was calling in a unit, for example, I would call in a tank here. By the time the tank got here, the front line had moved up to there. So always try to get your front lines or your units to keep moving with the front lines. Now I'm going to highlight this area again. I have my tanks here, my only K1. I have a scout vehicle here. I also have a scout vehicle here, aka a V90. This thing can take down tanks, by the way. And I wanted to sneak this thing around. I was not pushing at this point. I just wanted to secure this area for a bit, just to give him time to catch up. Because I know that he had a lot of forces which were around. He just needed some time to bring them in. And in the meanwhile I could bring in a command vehicle to secure this zone and get 7 extra income. It also gave me time, by the way, to get these KAV-25s in the play. So I sent those here, offload the infantry, and then go into these buildings. Go building hopping, and then try to get as many of these guys as I can. Now this is why you need recon. This TOW couldn't see anything because the recon was a little off. It was a little off to the side, and the buildings here were blocking the view. So I should have done better there. Another thing I should have done better is keep my AA closer, because these Piphawks were all the way back here. They should have been in there. That's a much better position because they were bringing in aircraft from these areas. So having some AA here would really have helped. As I was waiting for these guys to catch up, I also brought in a supply Chinook just to get some of these things refueled. Some needed repair, some needed some shells. So I got all of that in. And it also gave my ally some resupplies. Over here we got some 1-on-2. This is a very, very risky move. A M1 Abrams 65 point versus 120 point tank. Not sure how this is going to play out, but I can guess. It's not going to end well for that Abrams. Unless he gets air support. I don't think he's going to get it. Yeah, that's the Abrams down. Now I know at this point that there is a lot of work for me to be done. Because they have a bit of AA in here, which means that my air assault ally cannot push up as well. So it's my job to deal with that AA, to push up using my infantry and my tanks. And possibly these M36s, if I can get a good job for them. And then he can come in and help me. I also had Roman here, and you're going to see Roman using quite a bit of tanks as well. Except that his tanks got a bit too close to the Motostrelki here. And they got a perfect shot in his side. Pushing up with my Sochong Su-85s, trying to get these Motostrelki out of the way. And by having this infantry here, I was able to spot everything here. So all of the units here were letting loose on the Concours, on the Motostrelki, and this longbow, of course, was also helping with this spotting. I was doing some killing on BMD or BMP3s. I think I saw him kill some AA, etc. Now, as you can see, I'm only focusing on my side of the game. I have not even looked at what's going on in here. I just know that there's a lot of units. I don't really care what's going on the other side of the field. I know I should, because situational awareness is key in this game. But just focusing on your own sector gives you that much more control over the battlefield, or at least over your own zone, that it really helps your team out. If I'd have my attention divided, for example here in Quebec, and then think, oh hey, there's a nice opportunity to push in Tango, I would probably not be focused on either zone very well, and I'd lose them both. So that's why I only focus on one area. Now this is where I bring in something of a super heavy. It's a 150 point K1A1. Very good tank. Doesn't really excel at anything, but does everything pretty well. Good armor, good gun, good stabilizer, 55%. Unfortunately I can only bring in about 4, maybe 5 of these things, I'm not too sure. But they're very, very nice tanks. And since they had quite a bit of tanks coming in from both this zone and over there, I had to get more firepower in the field. Now, I was too aggressive with these KAV-25s. I was not prepared for these things to show up. Nor was Roman with his patents. Although he can do some damage against those things, provided he can get a side shot. Immediately got to work on those tanks, but since we didn't have any recon here anymore, I think this ninja just dropped to the floor level, the ground level. We didn't have eyes, so his toes were missing, and he was taking fire from this Mi-24V, which took down both of his helicopters. I was trying to engage these guys then at long range with my K1A1s. and also push into this zone, because I was already in this zone pretty deep with my KAV-90. In the meanwhile, I was sneaking up with a CV here, and I was just trying to contest this area, so have it neutral so that they couldn't bring in any more reinforcements, or at least not from this side, while we could more or less scout for their command vehicle. My tanks are destroying these guys over here, but now I do need some AA, so I bring up my KM163s, the Korean produced American AA gun, and we scare off these guys. Luckily for me, these were the Mi-24Vs and not the Mi-24 VPs, which don't have AA missiles but come with very good ATGMs. So I was pretty happy that I came up against these guys, which could not do a lot of damage to my tanks with their rocket pods. So you can see I'm really being quite aggressive here, moving across the open field with my tanks, which is what this deck excels at. Quickly taking ground and quickly trying to overrun the enemy. And because I was focused here more than here, my ally jumped in and took over this area as best he could. Now this is where it got a bit annoying, because these Seria 30s come with very good anti-tank missiles, ATGMs, and they took out my K1. So that was one of my heavy tanks down. They were bringing in 6 tanks, a couple of Jaguars and a couple of medium-priced T-62s. And I only had 1 tank here. Now the Seria comes in again and takes out another tank. Lesson here: get more AA in. And now I was thinking, where is my AA again? Because I knew I had those pips, but they were completely out of position over here. And I think by this point I had ordered them to move forward, but yeah, no fuel. So that was a bit of a derp moment for me. I had to have more AA in here, because without this AA, all of these tanks, and possibly even this command vehicle, if they spotted it, would be killed. And finally, yeah, the Serbia gets taken down, which is very good news for me, because that means that I'm a bit safer against or with these tanks and these tow launchers. I was a bit hesitant with my attack chopper here, because while this chopper is good, they had a tour in that town up ahead. So I decided to hold it while I was retreating my tank, because I could not stand against 7 tanks on my own. Luckily, Roman came to the rescue with a longbow, which narrowly avoided a Tor. And now we got some... yeah, I marked the position, saying, look guys, there's AA here. I believe it was my... yeah, it was my marker. But of course, by the time they already arrived, there was no AA left. And just watch how close my CV is to their AA. I'm glad that they only have very good air detection and not very good ground detection. So let's see what is coming to reinforce these guys. I had a K1A1 in here. This is something I called in earlier, but I forgot about it because I was too focused on this area. So lesson for me, focus on the surroundings. Brought in a KF-16 Block 52, which is the specialized F-16, which comes with both seed missiles and AA missiles. And then decided to bring in a Peace Pheasant, but I was not prepared for these guys. My ally was, and he helped me take these things down. Now over here I'm bringing in some more K1s, but you can see just how long our supply lines had gotten at this point. It was taking really a long time to get from one side to the next. My K1 is more or less in cover of this tree here. I still don't see exactly how you can hide a tank like this behind a bush like that, but okay. And he was taking out Jaguars. And this is unfortunately when they went out of range. I was considering bringing in a recon helicopter at this point, but doing that, I didn't know if the AA was dead, so I wasn't really ready to risk it yet. Instead, I put a marker here down, cover me. I was going to send in my CV, which was a very, very risky move, but they kept bringing in supplies and units, which was completely blocking our assault. So by doing this, I neutralized the zone. I don't capture it, I just neutralize it. And by neutralizing it, I was able to prevent them to bring anything else in and actually further the advance here. This is overkill, if you ask me. EPU is very much spamming tow missiles, but it worked. He managed to get so much fire onto those tanks and onto those vehicles that they really died quickly. But unfortunately, a couple of Tungushkas show up and he loses 2 helicopters. That's not too bad because we had 2 FOBs here, so we were pretty okay. At this point in the game I was also doing some deduction. I thought, okay, I have a CV here. We can be reasonably sure that there's no CV here because we would have probably seen it with my recon vehicle earlier. Also, the area was shelled, so any recon or any infantry command would probably have been panicked and they might have moved it. So their command unit had to be in either of these forests. So moving up with my K1A1. This was again very risky. I should have moved this guy up first and then the K1A1. Now we captured it for a minute, which means that they had some CV on the move, and they probably saw me coming in here, so they decided to retreat it. And you can see just how much we're leading by points now. 11,700 versus 5,000. And I'm really pulling my weight around here. I'm doing 1,500 points, just below Roman to 2395, who already has 1,800 points. So still trying to get everything moving up to the front line. You can see by the time these K1A1s were needed, which was fighting these tanks, I called them in. By the time they're actually there, everything's dead. So you gotta, on maps this size, really look ahead into how far you need to be. What are you going to encounter? Just have a combined arms assault, which means have some tanks, have some vehicles, have some helicopters, have some infantry. Although actually infantry on this map might not be that needed. In the meanwhile, taking out some Strelas here with my K1A1 and just holding this line for now until most of my units have caught up. My ally working is pushing up again, and again I was not in contact with either Roman or working, just putting down markers every now and then. You see me pulling in some new units right from here, which is a lot faster. He was also calling in some more tanks. Let's see how the battle is going over on the other side. They're also pushing in pretty hard here. This is probably my West German ally, looking at the combination of units he has here. We were now assaulting this position from 2 sides, coming in from the south, and they already detected the UAZ here with the combined recon, which was... it was interesting. I've never really seen helicopters, recon helicopters, fly with 2 or even 4 together. I think it's a bit overdone. One should have done the job, and an actual attack helicopter gunship should have killed that vehicle. But okay, we got this zone. So again, moving up as fast as we can. And you can see that again, some of my units are lagging behind. These K1s, which are called in to deal with the tanks, are now standing here. The battle is over here, which is about, I don't know, 200 clicks away, 200 kilometers. So I was really forcing everything to relocate as quickly as possible, and calling in another CV in the process. I wasn't the only one. Roman was also calling in a CV, EPU was calling in a CV, And Working was calling in a CV, so CV coordination should have been a bit better here. Because by now we had plenty of CVs around here. And we're also linking up with Kim Jong-un. And let's see, who else do we have here? Yeah, we got EPU, of course, with his helicopters. And what the hell? I hadn't even seen these guys. I must have ordered them in here. And they came out of this tube, out of this reinforcement zone. Which is fine, but I'd expected them to come from there. Okay, that's something I gotta pay attention to. Now, this is what you call a helicopter rush. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, say 5.5 groups of AH-1S. Very good helicopters, decently priced at 80. But I think he was pushing a bit too far too fast, because he had no idea what kind of AA there was in here. We had no way to actually secure the area, and he was just hunting CVs at this point. Which is fine, because it made them unable to call in any land units and air units from this side. So the only reinforcement zones they had left was Zulu, Yankee, and Yankee was also being threatened by Unleashed here in the south. So we're doing very, very well here. And again, my units are on move fast. I had expected this to be a new rally point, but by the time I got here, the battle was over here. So this was really, really a race to catch up. We're leading by 7,000 points. And because my allies were so fast with their helicopter rushes, there was not a lot for me to do. So the battle slowed down a bit for me later on in the game, and all I was doing was try to catch up as fast as I could. Now let's see, we got Roman here who captured this zone. Very good decision. I had the same idea, and I hadn't even seen that he'd put a CV in here. So by now we were everybody was bringing in CVs, which was kind of interesting. And here we're dealing with some cheap tanks, which are absolutely no match for Apaches and longbows. One thing missing here is AA, and that's now coming up. Closed SAMs, or closed arrows. But the arty spam here was incredible. It was coming from, I think, 4 launchers per battery here. Say 4 and 2. So we were really taking a lot of fire here. But mostly on the area where we had already passed through. Let's see what they were seeing. Not really sure who that was. Let's see who's in here. XXX. Okay, let's see. What can they see? That's interesting. I think that what happened was that they fired these launchers, these ARM-70s, by the time that we were here. But like we were trying to catch up, they were trying to fire at our position where we were last seen. And since these things take some time to aim, these ARM-70s, they were probably aiming where we were. So that explained that. Alright, back to my perspective. And they did stun a couple of my units. Maybe they destroyed the tow, I'm not sure. I don't think I lost any units there. This was annoying, however. These K1 and the K1A1 were taking a lot of fire. And here is the final blow to these guys. I had kept them still for too long and I got punished for it. Completely justified. And again, where is my long-range AA? Well, here. It's finally here. So again, my long-range AA was lacking. I really need to step up my game in that area. Luckily my allies did have some AA in here and they were able to at least suppress these guys. And the Patriots were able to take down some of those units. As you can see, we're now with more guys here. We got Roman, we got Working, We got Esser, we got, that's more Roman, we got Dark in here as well. My own units, of course. So we really had about 4 or 5 players which were pushing on this zone. And that allowed us to push up very, very hard. And we were racking up points like crazy. 17,000 points already. Non-stop combat air patrols here, A-10s all over the place. Had some of my K-1s move up here to deal with these units. Actually, I think they were out of position. Yeah, they could never see over that hill. It's another plane down. Now, I spot a lot of tanks, and I don't have any bombers. So the only thing I can bring in are napalm bombers, F5As. I used these on the area where they were going to go, although I'm not sure I entirely hit these guys. Yeah, I put down a firewall here just to panic these guys, so that if they would have the chance to fire, and if these guys were to go in here, they were at least going to get burned. So that's burned, worried, and then destroyed. Because look at the amount of fire these guys were taking, it's insane. All of these helicopters were having a very, very easy time engaging these tanks, so there was absolutely nothing they could do. Now, this is kinda overkill, but that's what you get at the end of the game. He called in 13 M1 IP tanks, but by this time the game had ended. Now, I am right here. I think I'm pretty much in the middle with the amount of kills and the amount of losses. Maybe a little high on the high end even. I do again have most of the command points because I brought in a lot of CVs to support my team that way. Let's do an analysis on what I lost. This is the kill list, not that interesting. Losses. I lost to a couple of heavy tanks. Again, heavy tanks, those T-80BVs. This was a problem. Those Seria 30s, which were really messing up my tanks. So I need to keep my AA closer, as I've repeatedly mentioned this game. RM70s took down a couple of vehicles. Yeah, I didn't really lose that many units, but they were quite expensive. So overall I was very happy with this game, and my Korean deck performed very well. Now keep in mind that I did design this deck specifically for open grounds, so I didn't have a lot of infantry. I didn't have a lot of slow vehicles. Everything was fast and had decent autonomy, except for those M36s. And this is how I designed the deck. Now if you want to see exactly what is in this deck, please watch the video which is in the link in the description below, because that's where I highlight that deck. That's where you can see exactly what is in my South Korean deck. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I taught you something. I always get something out of my videos, and in this case it was get more long range AA and keep your AA close, because that was really something that cost me some units. So I hope it was interesting for you as well. If it was, please let me know. Please hit the like button. If you have a question, suggestion, or just a general something you want to share, leave a comment below. I always look forward to hearing from you. And if you want to see more of my videos, subscribe to my channel. I aim to have 2 videos up every day. I might not make it every day because I have other obligations, but I try my best. Thanks for watching, and see you in another video.